Hey, welcome back to the Roving Sounds radio show, a podcast dedicated to researching, recording and sharing traditional music from around the world. My name is Ashley Deneve. So if you remember from the last episode, we were talking about this new album project that I've been preparing for the last few months. And in fact, in just a few days after this episode is released, I'll be in the studio recording it. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about today. Before we get into that though, I have some news, and that is that the project now has a name. The name is West of the World, and you can find the band under the hashtag West of the World on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm excited that it's no longer just the album project. So, West of the World. To start today, I want to share with you the 3 goals that I have for West of the World, and what I really want to achieve. And secondly, I wanted to share some of the main issues I'm encountering in making this album a reality. After deciding to actually do it, it became obvious how many different challenges there are involved with the project. There's logistical, musical, communicative, the list goes on. And I think these things not only make the project difficult, but they also make it really interesting. So I want to talk about a few of those things today. As always, there's more content and things to check out on our website, www.rovingsounds.org, where you can also subscribe to our mailing list to get updates from this project and Roving Sounds in general. So don't forget to check that out. So last time I talked about the idea behind the album, which is the collaboration between my own original music and the music of West African group Burkina Faso. But I want to be more specific now about what I hope to create. One of the first goals I had for this project was to experiment in using the balafon in a jazz context. The balafon is a tuned percussion instrument that's common in Mali and Burkina Faso, and it sounds like this. You can hear it playing underneath the drums. It's kind of like a giant wooden xylophone or vibraphone, and it's played in both a rhythmic and melodic way. Now, there are some examples of balafons being used in Western music, but never really as the basis for jazz compositions. So I had this idea that the balafon could replace the piano in a normal jazz group, and it kind of developed from there. To best explore this idea, I made the choice not to use any harmony instruments, that is, any instruments that play chords. So the instruments in the album are going to be balafon, trumpet, saxophone, bass, drums, and percussion. I think this will make it really easy for the balafon to be a feature of the music and really stand out. Burkina Faso's music and the music of most of West Africa has all these really intricate and exciting call and response phrases, like this one. Basically, what will happen is that the master drummer of a group will play a rhythm or a phrase on the djembe, and the band will answer him. The idea of having cues as a kind of language within each piece that everybody speaks and understands is something that I'm really interested in. So the second goal was to include these call and response phrases in the music. Firstly, just to experiment with the ideas and see how I can shape them, and secondly, to give the music a strong connection to West African music. The final goal is a bit more abstract. When I was in Africa studying with these musicians from Burkina Faso, I felt like I got a glimpse into what music is like for them in their communities. One of the things that became really clear was that Western culture relies heavily on left brain thinking, whereas the African culture that I saw seemed to be predominantly right brain thinking. If you're not familiar with this, it comes from a theory of neuroscience which says basically that the 2 halves of our brain are responsible for different things. The left brain is analytical, logical and linear, whilst the right brain is creative, holistic and intuitive. Western culture really relies on close analytical thinking, following patterns and sequences, and seeking to understand everything at a really minute level. Whilst it seemed like the right brain was more dominant in the places I went in Africa, people were creative, broad-minded, and at times superstitious. My final objective is to create music that stimulates the right brain, the creative and imaginative side, and isn't so concerned with the left brain. Having spent years thinking of music in a left brain way, I feel like this project is an excellent chance to give priority to the right brain. So, the challenges of this project, and there are quite a few. Here's the main ones that I'm concerned about. Firstly, this is a big project logistically. The guys from the band Burkina Asa live in the small African country of Burkina Faso, but they'll be on tour in France for the next few months. They magically have a gap in their tour schedule for a week, which they'll be in Toulouse for, and my initial thought was to fly the guys out to London, where I'm based, and do everything here. But that was going to be a nightmare getting the 4 guys in the band, plus their large, fragile instruments, across the channel and back for just 1 week. So it was easier to have them stay there in Toulouse and me go to them. Now the project is not just me and the guys from Burkina Asa. There's also Mirko from Italy on trumpet, Marco from Croatia on drums, and Sam from America on saxophone. Oh, I don't think I mentioned before that I play bass. Luckily, Marco lives in London, and Sam is visiting London at the moment, so we'll all fly to Toulouse. But Mirko is on tour in Denmark, so he'll be flying from Copenhagen to Toulouse. Now, this is just getting everybody in the same place. There's also the matter of accommodation, rehearsals, etc. The list goes on. Despite all the work in organising this side of the project, it's the part that I'm least worried about, because it feels like it's just kind of ticking items off a list. The part that really worries me is the communication, and in 2 different ways. The country of Burkina Faso was colonised by France in the late 1800s, so its official language is French, and English isn't really spoken. Funnily enough, before I started working on this project, I didn't speak any French, and over the past few months I've been learning and practicing in anticipation of the recording. Here's me fumbling through my first few sentences.
J'aime sa vie, car c'est intéressant et flexible, et aussi c'est...
I feel like at the moment I can kind of get by with very basic primary school level French, but I'm yet to really be tested. Sam, Marco and Mirko don't speak any French themselves, so it's all kind of down to me to communicate with the guys from Burkina Asa. The second part of the communication issue is the musical side. As I mentioned last episode, I studied music in a university, and part of the process is learning to read and write music on paper. It's quite an important skill for being a musician in Western society, but not so much if you're from rural Burkina Faso. So how do I communicate my music with the Burkina Asa guys when they don't read written music? Well, to get around this problem, I've made some really basic demos on my computer with some pretty average sounding digital instruments and sent the tracks to the guys to listen to and learn. Here's a small snippet of one. Now, I did this about a month ago, and I'm still not really sure to what degree they've learnt or rehearsed the music. So in the worst case scenario, I'll have to teach them everything during the rehearsals. I should mention here that when we're in Toulouse, we're having 2 days of rehearsal and 2 days of recording. So there will be time to get things together, but I would really prefer if they'd learnt some of it beforehand. We'll find out. For Marco, Mirko and Sam, however, I've prepared written music for them to read. So the rehearsal process is going to be negotiating between what's written on the page, what the Burkina Asa guys have learnt from the recordings, and what I hear in my head. It's going to be tricky. You're listening to a recording of Burkina Asa's balafon. The guys sent me a bunch of recordings of their instruments, so I can hear what notes they're able to play. Imagine a piano, which has all the possible notes laid out in front of you, and now imagine that every second note disappears. The balafon has only about half the notes that a piano does, and that really puts a limitation on what the music can be. For those of you who have some music knowledge, Burkina Asa's instruments are all in C major, and they don't have any notes outside that scale. This means that I have to be really careful with the notes that I use in my compositions. Because of this, I've had to be cautious that all the songs don't sound the same, and I've been trying to give each one its own unique flavour. Imagine a painter only being able to use the colour green and different shades of green. It's possible to make some beautiful pieces of art, but she has to be really conscious of all her decisions. Also, it's only possible to play 2 notes at a time on the balafon, meaning that it's impossible to play chords like you would with a piano or guitar. To get around both these issues, I've had to be creative and a little sneaky, and I'm going to tell you all about that in the next episode, which is going to really focus in on the compositional process. We'll be talking about how I overcame the limits of each instrument, and how I wrote the music for the project within the framework of my goals. In the meantime, the recording will be happening in just a few days' time, so if you're interested in getting updates throughout the process, please find Roving Sounds on Instagram or Facebook, where I'll be updating hopefully several times a day with new material. I hope you're as excited about this project as I am. Don't forget you can jump on our mailing list to get bonus tracks from every other post we've done, and some extra goodies from this project. I'll see you next time.